Hello everyone, Shoes here at This Irish Life, back again with episode 8 of the Buried Ireland series. We have had a fantastic journey. We've had ancient mythology, strange mounds, heavy mud flood, massive masonry, old maps, magic abbeys, star fortresses, which are also wells, immense castles and canal cities. This is the world that we're uncovering, that's sitting beneath the mud and the sand. And in mind, we are going to have a chat today about St. Patrick. But before we go there, before we discuss Patrick, I'd say there's going to be a couple of parts. This could even be a four-parter, I'd say. There's so much material there. Obviously, he's the patron saint of Ireland. Patrick's Day, the 17th of March, very, very famous celebration. So this man is heavily celebrated in our popular culture, and any man who's heavily celebrated, you reckon he's got a position of some sort, and he played a part in the change of power, no doubt. There's no doubt. So we are going to crack into this Patrick episode with, yes, randomly, this is a ziggurat. And this is the ziggurat, this is a ziggurat at Ur, where Abraham was from. So Abraham, the guy in the Bible, he was from Ur. And he went out, he was a similar figure to St. Patrick, actually. We're not going to really discuss much about that, even though I suppose it is a biblical tale, kind of. The tale of Patrick. Biblical tale in a pagan way, in the same way the tale of Abraham is a biblical tale in a pagan way. So this is a ziggurat. So what I'm thinking now is that this is what's sitting on top of a lot of the, these are the wells, these are the forts, so it's these as well, potentially sitting on top of the fort. So a fortress on top of a fortress, and then stars between them. I don't have a picture of an aerial view of this, but we might fly off somewhere at some stage and see one. I'll tell you, these things are hilarious. Whoop, 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 whoop. Try to change the picture. So we might stay on the ziggurat for longer, apparently. So let's continue to have a look at the ziggurat for a moment. And I suppose to point out with the ziggurat is that there's a bit of dirt up there as well, so the sand on top of it. So they dug a lot of these out in Iraq. I suppose I should explain a bit about it. Like these ziggurats, they're all over Iraq and Iran and all that area, all the desert. And a lot of them were covered in sand. So here we have everything covered in mud and dirt, and then trees grew on it. Whereas there, the weather wasn't going to give them any, they weren't going to get any trees, and it's all sand. But it's all buried the same way, you know. So it's hidden. So here's a couple more ziggurats. I won't open this up fully because it is a melter. It's not. It's great. So here's a couple of more pictures of random ziggurats. So this looks a lot like Ben Bulben. So when we're looking at Ben Bulben, again, which we will soon, maybe, I'm not sure when, or maybe just remember back to Ben Bulben, or maybe I pull it up. There's just so much to get through. Maybe Patrick will be a five-parter. So I'm thinking Ben Bulben here. Certainly, like this is a common pattern in the Ben Bulben. Do you know what? I'm going to have to get up Ben Bulben because it's actually too it's too like it not to bring it up. So I think Ben Bulben is actually in today's. I tell you, it's some task to look and talk at the same time for stuff. You wouldn't believe the difficulty of it. So Ben Bulben we're looking for. We'll find it. It's worth it. It's worth it. For if you don't remember Ben Bulben from an earlier video, this is Ben Bulben. So this is just up the road from where we're looking at. This is in Sligo. We looked at it. This is on the plain. We considered in a previous episode, was there a giant fort under here? Is what we considered. But that's Ben Bulben, very famous mountain. And that's a Starfort, or that's a ziggurat in Ur that is destroyed. So I wonder, and even the plains of Meath, I wonder, so like if the Starforts potentially had these things on top, these ziggurats, which I'm starting to consider now, like just imagine a load of dirt on that and it's just covered, it's just a mound. Like I think a lot of sand dunes, they're just covering masonry in the deserts. I think it's just a load of sand is just dumped on top of stuff. And this civilization was just massive. It was interconnected, gigantic. So I wonder, like the stars are hidden here. So this is all just solid sand. You can't see any stars. All the walls are hidden. The roads probably follow the walls. If you went down onto the roads now, if I went into this area and did, or if somebody wants to, it would be great, go into this area and look at the roads and the paths into Iraq and Iran. I think the Google Maps actually gives you decent enough pictures. So that would be a way to see the stars. So there should be stars here as well. And I'm just wondering that, do we have, these are much taller, like this here. You don't see any of that in Meath, I don't think there's anything of that size, or else they were all destroyed. But I don't see that level of destruction where you could take off a whole section in the land. It doesn't look that, like maybe the lakes, who knows, maybe the lakes were these things and they were just absolutely obliterated. So anyway, that's Ben Bulben, possibly a giant fortress. It's up here. It's up here. We're going to carry on with a couple more photos. Look at the size of these things, just gigantic. Oh, the ziggurats. This one here. Like, is that what we're looking at potentially? In some of the cairns on the plains of Carrakeel, like these plains here, this is what we see, like these mountains here, we looked at them and those mountains look like they've got something like this sitting on top of them, and then you've got like these odd, like there have got like gravel all up the side of them. It's just lots of gravel and dirt, and then there's like grass up here. Then you might have an odd shape at the top with like a cross coming out of it, but it's like a beehive hut. Like this, and this walks up here. It's like an old stepway, but it's all dirt and rocks. And that's what all this area here looks like when we deep dived into this in the earlier episodes. And Ben Bulben is over here, which is epic. So all this area was important in the old tales, and it was important to St. Patrick. A lot went on with St. Patrick here, as we're going to discuss in these episodes or in these parts about St. Patrick. So in this area, St. Patrick did a lot. So will this arrow ever pop back again for me, I wonder? It's just being not quite sure what's going on. We'll close it down and we're going to start again. Is what we're going to do. We're actually going to go over to Ben Bulbin quickly before we start. We're going to go straight into Ben Bulbin. The old internet there. This is the fort that is Ben Bulbin from the top. So that looks out across the plain from here, and it's very sharp. Like, you'd have to be saying fairly confidently, I mean, that just even looks like a giant star. Not even, like, forget the ziggurat. Like, that edge there just looks like that's a big star edge. And that's a big star edge. Like, that's the edge of one of the stars. Pretty crazy. Pretty crazy. So we're going to crack on with Patrick, St. Patrick. And we're nearly into him there now. We've really painted a new picture of the world, and now we're going to put St. Patrick into this new world, into the canal world. We're going to put Patrick into the world of the canals, and we're going to put Patrick into the feuds of the Fir Bolgs and the Fomorians and the Tuatha De Danann, and we're also going to potentially include him in the battles of like Césaire and Partholon. We'll put them in with that as well. So we're going to consider Patrick in all these time frames, but we're going to put him in the canal world. So we're going to put him in the world with no mud and big fortresses, okay? And then we're going to look at his journeys in those eyes. So this is the ziggurat of Anu. Before we go into Patrick, Patrick could well be Anu as well, or he could be the son of Anu. Anu could be Enki, or the Dagda, or Elaha, or all of the above, Dalebath. All these guys could be the same guy. Just replaying, it's like Ready Player One. Oh, I'm dead. Oh, I'm back again. Just reboot the character. I wonder, could they just reboot the character and come back again? But this here is the ziggurat of Anu. Anu was the leader of the Anunnaki. He was the father god of the Anunnaki. He was the father of Enki and Enlil. I think I'm not sure, was he the father of Inanna? I have in my mind that he was the uncle. But anyway, this is once again, this is in Iraq. They're saying that it's like built 4000 BCE, 4,000 years ago. This had rubbish dumped on it a couple of hundred years ago. This is still masonry, you can see it. But this is what we're looking at here, you know, in Ireland as well, except we've got grass and trees and bog. They've got sand and stones. We've also got stones. All the mining waste. So they all explode. So I suppose the ziggurats, looking at these ziggurats, maybe they weren't necessary. It would be interesting to look further into the ziggurats. But the reason I'm showing the ziggurat is trying to get across the idea of the fortress idea. And the big fortress under the ground. It may not be the same design, but you get what I mean. So this is St. Patrick. This is St. Patrick. He is the patron saint of Ireland, and he is credited with bringing Christianity to Ireland in about the year 500, and he journeyed across Ireland converting people to the religion of Jesus on behalf of the Church of Rome. There's a couple of different stories as to who he was and what he was. All of them are inconclusive. He's still quite a mythical, elusive character in terms of whether he existed or not. He seems to certainly be a supernatural character. I'm equating him to, I wouldn't rule out that he might be the Dagda. I wouldn't rule out that he might be the Dagda's son. I wouldn't rule out that he might be both of them. He's like shapeshifters, because this is what their skills were. The Dagda, I think was he a shapeshifter? The Morrigan was a shapeshifter. I think Dagda was a shapeshifter. There was a couple of shapeshifters anyway. And he has his cross here. His little cross. Magical, is that magical? Like, is there power in that? And then he has the 3-leaf clover, which is the shamrock, or I'm saying is that the Morrigan, the triple goddess, and he's bringing the triple of the religion. So he's saying Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Maybe they were a trinity. Maybe Elaha is in on it as well. But there is an odd story to go with St. Patrick. That is for certain. That is St. Patrick's Cathedral in the United States. That's in New York. I think that grass inside there couldn't be. But look at this huge building, mud flooded. Like, New York got it, everywhere got it. But once again, St. Patrick, just to illustrate that he's a worldwide celebrity. Here we've got St. Patrick being told to go to Ireland by the Pope. This is in Kilkenny Cathedral. There's a lot of history in Kilkenny as well. S. Patricius Missus Hibernium. Patrick, go to Ireland, and he has his fancy stick, a bit of tech on it maybe, his fancy clothes. They may look like normal clothes, but when you are walking around in the environment of the world of cathedrals and electrified magical land, you can do magical things maybe. But obviously here we got lots of water. This here seems to be maybe, would this be afterwards? Did they do these bits of art? Because you'd like to think they were before, but in the time frame of the pre-flood, I'm just trying to think of when that art would fit in. This could have been the cult. Like, they could, like, this may never, like Patrick, he could be multiple people. This could be the Dagda, it could be Wada, could be any of them. Could be an invader that we've never heard of. They say he came from Spain, which we'll see shortly. So St. Patrick, from Patricius Padrig, was a 5th century Romano-British Christian missionary and a bishop in Ireland, known as the Apostle of Ireland. He is the primary patron saint of Ireland, the other patron saints being Bridget of Kildare and Columba. So Bridget of Kildare is likely to be possibly Boann, Taltu, those goddesses that were in that area. So Bridget is likely to be one of them, possibly even Eru as well. She could be Eru, although I think Eru is more with Ishnock. So he's an important character in the scheme of it. So the stories of Patrick, where do we hear about Patrick? You know, where do we hear about this guy? Who's written about him? So the details supplied by Tirchan and Muraku in particular the churches established by Patrick and the monasteries founded by his converts, may relate to the situation in the 7th century when the churches, which claimed ties to Patrick, and in particular Armagh, were expanding their influence throughout Ireland in competition with the Church of Kildare. In the same period, Wilfrid, Archbishop of York, claimed to speak as a metropolitan archbishop for all of the northern part of Britain and Ireland at a council held in Rome in the time of Pope Agatho, thus claiming jurisdiction over the Irish Church. So essentially, that waffle there that I just wasted my time reading said that Ireland was becoming a Roman country. So I'm reading that and I'm thinking to myself, Patrick established churches, okay? So let's have a think about the state of Ireland at the time. And we've got a land that is canalled, and you've got abbeys which are functioning like Gothic cathedrals, there's graveyards which are maybe magical, and there's magic happening all over the place. The cathedrals, the stars, the water, there's a whole different world, a whole different energy happening. But there are different factions of people, and are we looking at the ones, so the Roman and the Catholic churches, the ones that were not destroyed and not bombed and not obliterated? They were the ones that obviously won. So they were the churches. They essentially became the churches of St. Patrick, St. Patrick's churches. And many churches are named after St. Patrick. So would it be right to consider then that Patrick took hold of or already had control? So maybe Patrick already had control of these churches. Maybe he didn't come from anywhere and he was always here, but this was his move. Maybe he was Bress the Beautiful with Eru, like we spoke about that. Maybe he was Angus with Boan and Dagda. Like that's the triple god theme again. Maybe there were multiples all over the place. Maybe they had clones of each other. Maybe they were banging out extra bodies all over the place. You know, maybe that's what was going on. Who knows? Get down to the cloning shop and have a couple of them going at the same time. A couple of Patricks in a couple of places. Odin up the north, and he works as Jesus down the south. Maybe it's certainly within the realms of possibility. Most certainly. So I'm considering that Patrick was the Patrick along with his with Eru. Patrick I would also equate to American, who is a Milesian druid. So the Milesians were the last to conquer Ireland before Christianity, they say. But I actually reckon the Milesians are the only conquerors of Ireland, and they were the Roman Church, as we regard it. So those Milesians, I think of them as the same crowd as that St. Patrick was working with, and Patrick was controlling. Like, it's like Abraham in the story. It really is, it parallels it. It's like Abraham. If you look at Zechariah Sitchin's stories about the Anunnaki, was the Chronicles of Earth, I think. But Zechariah Sitchin, if you haven't heard of him, it's quite well known. It's been around for a long time. He chronicles the Abraham journey. So Abraham was told by God to leave Ur, where we looked at that ziggurat a minute ago. He was told to leave Ur and go to, I can't remember where he was told, but he was told to go somewhere away from where he was and spread the word of the God. Except in Zechariah Sitchin's version of it, he's going to spaceports, he's talking to gods, they got magical powers. So whilst it's set in the biblical time, he overlays the Anunnaki story. Once again, the Anunnaki being the creators of humans in that story. So Abraham and St. Patrick are very, very mirrored in their journey. Abraham left, or Patrick supposedly either came from England as a slave, is one story. And the other story is that he came from Spain. And I think there's another story that he came from Rome directly. And then potentially he came from nowhere and he was always here and they just pretended that he came from somewhere, like they like to do in the writings. So the monks, the rewriters. So I'm thinking St. Patrick came in, he obliterated all the monasteries. So all the monasteries that he supposedly founded, flipped that on its head. We live in the inverted world. St. Patrick founded the monasteries. No, St. Patrick destroyed the monasteries. He drove all the snakes out of Ireland. He probably did. The snake people, whoever they were, or not whoever they were, I would imagine the snake people are the gods of old, the Tuatha Dé Danann, the Fomorian Fir Bolg, that whole faction. The Normans, I think that they were the Normans were the same people. They were the Tuatha Dé Danann, and I think St. Patrick is the traitor among them. He's the guy that took over, and he did it with the help of his mother, potentially, if we mirror some of the stories of the Indus Valley and Indra and Baharasta, I think is the mother's name. But there's a fantastic story that I'm going to discuss at some stage. It's called The Greatest Story Never Told by Lana Cantrell. And it's one of the first stories that I really got into prehistory and looking at it from a scientific perspective. And this book goes into the fall of man from a higher state of being. So it's essentially describing, there was a golden age and then there was some wars and there was a lot of trouble. There was a lot of betrayal. There was a lot of stuff dumped on top of people's palaces. There was kidnapping. There was raping. There was family disputes. They were all family. They all took different sides. And then you had men in the middle of this whole story. So the men. So these were the gods. And then the men came from, she said that men came from the gods and that we devolved and that there was a great war and that the gods didn't create humans, but humans were the result of the gods being poisoned, or a faction of the gods being poisoned by the nuclear war. So if you look at the wars of Harappa, it talks about all the nuclear wars in the Vedas. It's just like this here. There was just everything got destroyed and obliterated. But the human species, in her mind, she was a biologist, she was a doctor, and this was actually her PhD. It's an amazing book, really, really great. I was lucky to get a hold of it. It's quite rare now, I think. And I think there's a version of it. I think there's a red version, an ebook on YouTube, like the whole lot. It's a massive book, really, really big, like 800 pages, but like scientific data, very, very thorough. And she puts forward a fantastic case to say that the humans are a result of a poisoned, higher physical body, essentially. And that maybe there was some genetic engineering involved. Maybe it looks like the human race was fixed up after the first war. Everything was fixed up, and they helped the humans they helped the people who were poisoned in the war. So during the big war of the gods, the first war, it's a long old story. So I'm not going to go into it here. But that's one of the versions that I found to be fascinating to consider. And I'm thinking here in my mind, Patrick was probably not a human. He was probably a demigod, if not top dog. So was Abraham as well. Abraham, leave your country, go to a far off place. So we're going to flick through some writings here. I know I'm doing a lot of talking, we're not doing a lot of looking, but I'm kind of trying to just gather the whole picture together and link in a little bit of comparative mythology at this stage, because we are going to end up going down the comparative mythology direction. If there's other series involved, there's certainly the potential to look at it again from those different stories. It's just that in Ireland the stories, like everywhere, the stories seem to work out. Like, was it? I don't know. Was the world mimicking each? Was it happening in the same stars all over the place? Was there an Abraham for every location? Was there a Patrick for every? Was there a Patrick for every country? Maybe. So the writings of Saint Patrick, they are few and far between. And as we said, Tyrconnell and that other gentleman, they were the two people that wrote about Patrick. And they also referred to him with different names. They called him Cothyr Tiacus, they called him Patricius, they called him Holy Magonus, the famous. So they called him Cetus, the god of war. So like that's Ares right there, the god of war in traditional folklore. God, the Irish had plenty of gods of war, though, to be fair. So there's certainly a possibility he was a totally different person, no doubt about it. But it's just the stories are so similar. Like he could very well be like the Dagda moving about the place, or he could very well be Bress moving about the place. Or one of the other Tuatha on that family. It seems to be it's all in that family. It's like a big family dispute, and that was the same in the land of Cantrell book. It was like two brothers and a sister, and a mother and a father, and some inbreeding and a lot of fighting and a lot of magic. So the dates of Patrick's life are uncertain, but generally they look at the 5th century as being the time. So we're looking around the 5th century. And then that works nicely for us because that pops into my time frame of kind of digging out of the flood, kind of 1600s, the society getting back up and running. This would have been probably pre-flood or after the flood, as in like I think that when these wells bust, a lot of people didn't expect it. When the Starforts, as we have discussed, when these Starfort fortresses with the big wells and the bogs on them now, which we looked into in the previous episodes in great detail, when they broke, the good guys, let's say, or the other guys, the losers of the war, the people who got flooded out and lost everything, the people who had abbeys, the people who lost the people who lost everything, the gods, the demigods, whoever they were, or the combination of both, it fits into kind of this time frame in my mind, around 500 after Christ, or I 500. So Patrick fits in nicely there to that. And most of the stories are written, they're much later. He had quite a few relics as well. And Columkill is related to him. He could also be Patrick. Like Columkill could be Patrick as well. I haven't looked into it, but or could be his son. The death of Patrick's disciple Mocta is dated in the annals at 535. So Mocta, 535. So that put Patrick around that time. So if there was a Patrick, This is the time frame that they're talking about. They said he's buried in Downpatrick, which is in Northern Ireland. It's probably a massive fort. When they say buried, I'm starting to wonder, do they mean buried in bog? You know? And when they say buried, do they mean that was the fort of Patrick that was buried? So let's say, like Maeve's cairn. They say that Maeve is buried there under the mounds of dirt and bog. That, like, her cairn is undoubtedly a fort, I'm sure, if we go and look, when we go and look. So I'm thinking that when they're buried there, are they literally buried in the mud there? Are they there, or is it just the fact that that's their place and that's why then they're considered buried because that was their house, or that was their well, that was their inheritance. I mean, like, you had your own well in this Canal Star civilization. You were a high roller, obviously. Like, these guys were all the high rollers. The family of Dalebath and Ernmas, the Dagda and Nuada, those Firbolgs, Slana, all his brothers, they were all high rollers. Those Normans that lived in the valleys and the lakes and the Norman castles all over Ireland, they were the high rollers, and they were the decision makers. And there was people there too. It was like they were possibly big people as well. They were the gods. They made the decision, and then they got kicked out by Patrick. So Patrick kicked the snakes out of Ireland. After, I suspect, he orchestrated the opening of all the wells with his mother / sister / daughter, Eru, aka the Morrigan, aka Baka, aka Bab Fowler, all of them together. Is that what happened? In the Book of Armagh, they record the death of Patrick, the arch-apostle. He's an arch-apostle, archangel, arch-apostle. Maybe apostles were angels. Arch-apostle of the Scoti on 17th of March at age 120. Really good age. And maybe that was like, that was like the last time he had one last body after all the Starforts were gone. He had one body left. And he lasted 120 years and then he was done. Maybe they couldn't reincarnate anymore. Maybe that was part of it. I know it sounds out there, but let's consider the possibility that they had a control over reincarnation, and the gods were able to play life like a video game, and you could drop out, you could get killed, but you could be rebooted back at your local well. So you had a well, and that well had an abbey, and the abbey had technology there that healed you, and it was related to the well, and it was related to the water in the well. There was something fancy going on with all of these fortifications, all these fortresses that had wells, and then the wells fed all the canals as well. So it fed the local canal, I'd imagine. And you had multiple wells relating to all of the areas. And when we talk about holy wells, I think, we have been tricked with holy wells. We're given an idea that a well is just a small little narrow limestone cylinder that drops into the ground to a source of water. And while, yes, that's access to water, is a well, the traditional meaning for a well, I must look into it at a different time, is the traditional meaning for a well something much fancier, like these forts, like these guys here, like the well of Segis in Tara, the well of Slane, the well of Slana, that Dean Cacht used to heal the Tuatha De Danann. So could you be a god, and as long as you have all of your wells working, you can reincarnate as many times as you want. You can have battles, you can like kill people, you can come back, you can replay again, you can do it over hundreds of years. You live in a crystal canal complex, like remembering again here now that the canal system we're looking at as being crystal. So instead of limestone, we're thinking in terms of crystal. We're thinking in terms of like flashy. We're also going to introduce, this is something that is going to be amazing when it's introduced. And I think the Ohm calendar, which we've looked into, I'm not sure if anyone's looked at the podcast that myself and Doug did. We did a podcast with Jared Banks. He's a local researcher doing some amazing work with trees and understanding the flows of energy within nature and plugging into the old druidic teachings about nature and about how to master nature and how to use nature. So a lot of the Irish pagan traditions, we think of them in terms of stone circles and fires, and it's all very Stone Age like. Whereas now with this view of the forts, we can now look at what was going on in these areas as something quite different. But we also now have to overlay the Ogham, the Ogham. So the brother of the Dagda was Ogham, and he's credited with the Ogham, the Ogham, Ogham, that language. And these are the little flicks that you see on the stones, an Ogham stone or an Ogham stone, some people call it. So we know, so that alphabet derives from trees. So there's a whole rabbit hole about the Ogham alphabet and how it relates to trees and nature and the cycles of nature and positions. So I'd imagine that all areas of the Starforts or the Star Cities they were all, and when I say Star City, I'm including the mud countryside. I'm not just talking about cities here. I think the countryside was actually where it was at for the most part. That's where all the hustle and bustle was going on. The cities were for trading by the looks of it, but there was an awful lot going on everywhere else as well that is no longer going on, including in the sea possibly too, and in the lakes, as we've said. Big crystal canals, remember. Oh, it's just mind blowing to consider, isn't it? It's like almost too much to consider, but the evidence is overwhelming. It's just overwhelming. Like, what can you do in the face of such ridiculous evidence? And it makes sense. It's making sense with the stories that we're talking about. Like, we're talking through what happened. It's literally there in front of our faces, and it is just it's there. So Ogham, the Ogham calendar, and trees. How did they did they plant trees around all of the star cities? So trees give an energy. You can plant an Ogham calendar around your home, and you choose 12 trees as far as I remember, and the 12 trees, one of which is oak and there's elm and there's ash, and you spread them around in a circle around your home, and they all go. And they have certain strengths at certain times of year depending on the cycles of nature and the cycles of the moon, and there's energies that work within the trees. So I'd imagine that star, whatever it is underneath the ground, helped. Maybe there used to be nothing at all left in the ground. Maybe there was nothing left. They literally scoured the land and it was done. Maybe that was the end of the Golden Age. And then they had to repopulate, and the only way they could do it was they had to just put canals everywhere, maybe. Lots to consider. And we've barely even started, so we better crack on. So the dating of Patrick, we're saying, is the 500s. There's a theory about two Patricks. There's There's probably like 50 Patricks, to be honest, but this is a kind of known one. Saint Kieran, they equate Patrick to Saint Kieran of Segur, Segis maybe. Is it Nuada? Took the Nuada and Lug. And also here Palladius. So Palladius, yeah, Palladius was another guy who's potentially Patrick. Secundus is remembered by Dunshaughlin close to the hill, which is associated with the hill of Tara. We'll look at Dunshaughlin at some stage. Spent quite a bit of time there in my early life. Killashee, County Kildare, close to Naas. So Killashee, kill, forest. That's another one we're going to look at. Like kill means forest. Quill, quilta, quill, kill. The forest, they were all forests. They used to be forests. The forest of She, forest of Dare, and like Dela, the forest of the Firbolg. Right, next. So we're giving a lot of background here to St. Patrick. I realise that, but I think it's necessary to really set the scene here. And I think we're like, if you haven't looked at the earlier episodes, you really should, to try and get a grasp of what we're actually discussing here and the gravity of it, because unless you've come on the journey, or part of the journey at least, you can't really grasp. You certainly can't grasp where I'm coming from right now if this is the first video you've watched of this series. But essentially, like, this is Galway, so this is close to where St. Patrick was. He spent a lot of time in east of the country. But Galway, Galway. There used to be an ad. Some dude hopping into the car. Ben Bulbin. So look at this here. Like, what is under here? This is a big, gigantic blob. Like, I would reckon you'd be thinking there's something under there. It's going to be slow to load, is it? Carramore Megalithic Cemetery. So once again, like, this is the Megalithic Cemetery. This is the fort that is buried. This doesn't seem to want to buffer this evening, so we're probably not going to go down too far. We're not going to spend a load of time waiting for it to buffer. But like, all of this here, like, this will be a massive fortress here. All of this is a fortress. And remember, this used to be a lake here. So there used to be a big lake right here. And there was land here. Glencullen Kill, that's where Cullen Kill's from. And there's stories of St. Patrick having dealings, or do they have dealings together? I'm not sure. Can't remember. But this land used to come down here. We've seen in the old map, we've seen that. We're not going to pull that up now. We've seen that already. You know, I'm not going to be able to go back over the old stuff again at this stage. I've tried, and I've really, like, if you're following the series and you start from one, you should get a good grasp of what's going on, even with the people. I know it sounds super complicated. But if you follow from the beginning, you'll understand what's going on. So Galway is here. This is Galway. Loch Corrib is here. We looked at Loch Corrib. We've got Doonbress. There's 365 islands in here. And then this is just a little picture of Galway. Just break up the monotony of the text. So this is Galway, you know. canals, multiple canals, bridges going in. It looks quite similar to Cork actually. Got your stair out here. And this is all covered now at this stage. So this is after the cataclysm. 1600s. Here, look, you've got a cross in the middle of the road. So I reckon the reason, and I've only thought of this recently, the reason that we've got so many Celtic crosses just sitting in the middle of main roads and along the sides of roads is that they're actually up much higher. So this land here, this is up 6 foot higher than it should be. So this is on top of something, and you can probably go in under. So like all of this is accessible from, or was accessible from a lower level, no doubt. Then you've got your cathedrals in here. We've got a load of crosses all here. So then we're thinking this is also 6 foot down. Remember that. So all these buildings here, these would all have been covered in the dirt too. So these are like 6 to 12 feet down lower too. So all of this was probably accessed from down lower. You know, you come up, you get in, you're underneath, and you could probably go all the way over to here. You may even have been able to go underneath here as well, underneath the canals, because they had underground tube systems and the lakes only go so deep. So if you go in and under, you could go under all of the star cities as well. So you've got a gigantic network of starforts. Look at this fella here. But that's like the one in Tyrone now, just sitting there. That's just on the edge of a large one. Is that a well, you know? And look, here's you've got your cathedral just sitting on top of it. Once again, providing some sort of a purpose for something. Crosses everywhere. Dirt over here. So that's Galway. Which is here. And then you've got the Moycullen bogs. These are no doubt all forts all along here. We're not going to look, but someone's going to look at some stage, I'm sure, and they're going to, you know, it would only take 2 seconds to drop down there and look and see the patterning. We're not going to do it now though, because I'm not down this direction, and we're talking about St. Patrick. We've already looked at enough of those, and I think Kinvara, why does it want me to go to Kinvara? What's going on there? So in Kinvara, before we leave Galway, Kinvara is a small little town on the edge of a lake. And there is a castle on the edge of the lake. Very nice. Just once again, that's Dún Gair Castle. I haven't come across that before. But that's just another ruin on the side of the lake. I mean, at this stage, I think, like, we've come so far in this journey now, we've got to just take it for granted that we've got the star cities, just in case it really needs to be hammered home again. And I think, look, we looked at ziggurats to start. I know we did. I think that we just need to have a little reminder of just these lads here again. Just to, like, what we're looking here. I know it sounds ridiculous, and for people it's the first time if they're just popping into this video because it's tagged about St. Patrick. What's going on? This is just a tiny little, like this Patrick thing is probably going to have multiple parts, but these are the cities that we're looking at. And they're in all weird shapes and sizes and patterns. They're all different types of structures. You can read this in your own time. Pause the video there if you want. But all different types. These weird ones as well with fields. Fields are really segmented with lots of walls. Canal system. So this is what we're saying about the canals. There was just a massive canal systems. It was all canals, and the whole landscape was canaled. It wasn't just one section or two sections. It's everywhere. It's all over the place. It's the walls that you see, and these are the shapes. It's like a circuit board almost, and there was currents, and there's just canals everywhere. You go to episode 1, we start off with canals. We show that there's canals. There's canals everywhere. Anyway, not labouring that point again. 55 minutes. I think at that I'm going to have to cut this one and return again with a bit more juice on St. Patrick. Like, I think we've definitely set the scene well for St. Patrick. No doubt about it. This is him. He's here with his 3-leaf clover. Like, he's a very majestic character. Look at this behind him. It's just beautiful and regal. Like, he looks very macked. You know, like, this is a guy that knows, like, whatever, like, he's wearing, I'd say his clothes are magic from the look of him, you know. So we're going to get more into the journeys of St. Patrick, and we're going to carry on and piece together who was St. Patrick, what was he doing in Ireland, and we're going to continue to look at all the buried masonry and forts that are all over the place, all over the country and all over the world. So I'm going to fly off, and I will see you in the next part 2.